So we're going to be talking about the 3 ways to build strong workplace culture through human connection. And I thought we could start off with a quick fun question in the spirit of human connection. What's one item on your bucket list? And if you want to type this into the QA window, feel free to do so. As Courtney just said, the chat has been disabled, but just throw this into the QA window. What's something fun you might like to be doing right now? Maybe some of you want to be at a spa with a good friend. Perhaps you want to be on a beach in Hawaii with your family. Maybe some of you want to be doing a fossil dig for dinosaur bones on the weekend. But you tell me. I'm just going to pull up this little QA window. Scuba dive with whales. I love it. Thank you. That's from Karen. Alex said scuba dive at the Great Barrier Reef. Angie would love to go on a luxury European vacation. I love it. Amazing. I would travel to Japan. Personal vacation to Mexico. Thank you. There's a couple of trips to Mexico. I think I'd love to join you if you don't mind. Amazing. So now that we're a little bit more acquainted with one another, let's jump into today's session. So today is going to be hosted by Bucketlist Rewards, the #1 employee rewards and recognition program. And we're so excited to have Courtney from Donut. Donut is a virtual water cool and team building from anywhere platform. We are over at Bucketlist. We're not only fans of their organization, but we're users of their product. And I have to say, they're a fantastic organization and it is a very cool product. And just as a short biography of myself, I am the CEO of Bucketlist Rewards. And I feel super fortunate. I've had the chance to work with hundreds of organizations, everything from Fortune 100s all the way to startups. And I worked with clients like the Royal Bank of Canada. They're one of the largest financial institutions in the world, the NFL, multinational tech companies, hospitals, and post-secondary institutions. And the reason I share all that is I'm really looking forward to sharing stories and relevant tips and tricks in today's session on how to build a workplace culture that is both strong and connected. And now I'd love to turn it over to Courtney to introduce herself. As a mini intro, I've had a chance to get to know Courtney over the past few weeks, and she's just a delight to interact and work with. And Courtney, if you could introduce yourself, that'd be fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, and likewise to you as well. I am Courtney. I work in employee experience at Donut. I like to share that I've had a little bit of a non-traditional career background, as I know a lot of people who find themselves in like the HR talent recruiting space often say we fell into this job. And part of the reason for that is just that over the years, as I interacted with people at different jobs, I really discovered, relevant to today's topic, the importance of the relationships that I built at work. And so I've been at Donut for about 4 years. I started in customer experience and got the opportunity to interact with people from hundreds of companies who were trying to solve a lot of different challenges on their teams in the employee experience space. And so for about the last 2 years, I've transitioned into employee experience, helping our people internally build stronger relationships. And that's why I'm super excited to be here today and talk about this.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you for the introduction, Courtney. And to switch gears and to share a little bit about the housekeeping. So the chat box is disabled, so we're just going to be using the QA to submit any questions as they come up. And please feel free to ask questions. We've got a little bit of time at the end set aside for Q&A. This session is also qualified for professional development credits, and we'll be sharing those at the end. And I'll read those out as well for all of those, for those of you who have dialed in. And we'll be recording today's session as well, and we'll be sending a copy of that to everybody who registered. So with that, let's discuss the agenda. So today we're going to be talking about the ROI of building human connections. And we're going to go through 3 ways to build a strong culture, which includes things like understanding coworkers as people, personalizing recognition and celebration, and creating time and space for authentic communications. And with that, I'd love to get into the first poll question. And that question is the importance of workplace connection. So having an authentic relationships with our colleagues makes us more productive, 7 times more engaged, and increases our happiness as much as how much dollar of a raise. And this is a poll question, so I'm going to pop this up on screen for everybody. Give me a moment. I'm launching the survey now. So why don't you all take a guess as to how much this can increase by? I see lots of guesses coming in. Ooh, it's a good mix, which I always love. And I'll give this about another 5 or 10 seconds. Awesome. Okay, quite a few responses at this point. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. So the majority of you, or near majority of you, thought somewhere between $10,000 to $50,000. It turns out it's quite a bit bigger than that. In fact, having authentic relationships at work can increase our happiness as much as $100,000 raise, which is pretty darn significant. I'm happy to share some experiences on that, but I think this would be a great place to invite Courtney to walk us through the ROI of human connection.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. I love that stat. And I feel like people's jaw always hits the floor when they hear that. But yes, there's a couple different stats here on the screen for you about the ROI of these human connections. I love that second bullet point. People who have 6 or more workplace friends report feeling deeply connected to their companies. And I think it's important there to stress that it's to their company, right? It's not just, oh, my best friend at work. They actually feel connected to their company. If they just have one best friend at work, they're 7 times more likely to be engaged, which I know Jason mentioned. And your close friendships can boost your overall employee satisfaction by 50%. So I think the takeaway here is that when team members have good relationships with each other, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more able to handle stress. They're going to feel more satisfied. They're going to be more productive. They also are just going to feel more connected to the work that they do. They're going to feel that things are more meaningful because they're part of a team, they're part of a community, and they're working together. And we have this great quote from Angie Hawkins. Angie may be on this webinar. So hi, Angie, if you are here. Angie's at Stanford University. And I love what Angie said here. You can talk about assessing what the culture is and changing it and what you want it to be, right? So we can say, here's what we want our goals to be. But none of that is going to matter if the relationships are not there. The relationships are what make it come to life. And I definitely think I've experienced this, that we can look at the data and the numbers and say what we want things to be. But the relationships are the lens through which we sort of interpret everything that's happening to us at work. So those relationships have to be there, because if they're not, things can fall really flat very quickly.
I just to echo your comments, in my own experiences, Courtney, I've had the opportunity to build a few different organizations, and at Bucketlist, we've really focused on culture first. And as a part of that, like, we've tried to build a place where there's lots of friendships and genuine and authentic connections. Mm-hmm. And having done that deliberately, Bucketlist is easily the most fun organization I've ever been a part of. And like, I look forward to meetings. I look forward to showing up for work. And you're right. And so my experience just echoes everything you just shared about having friends at work and building a truly connected culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to start with our first method, because I know we're looking at 3 different methods here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about method number 1, which is all about understanding coworkers as people, because we're more than what we do at our job every day. That's certainly part of who we are. But, I can know that someone in a different department's title is XYZ, but I'd much rather know that they have 3 dogs and that they like to go ride their bicycle when it's warm outside. So there's this great quote here from the Whole Person Workplace that we wanted to shout out. The idea that work is work and your life should be separate from it is really kind of a fiction, right? I love that. An employee should be valued as a whole person, not just part of the machine. So I know when Scott was doing an interview with a chief HR officer, there was another quote that came out of that about how we get the whole person through the door. Again, they're not just their title. And I love this actual quote. We get their backs and their hands and their minds and their hearts, and they're all different places in their lives. So we have to do our best to take care of them because they're our assets. They are what's going to help us succeed as a business. So we have to see them as more than just what they do from 9 to 5 when they show up to work, or whatever time they might be working.
Amazing.
Oh, sorry. There was one other thing I wanted to shout out, Jason, really quick, if you don't mind. Um, there was an example that I know this isn't on the slide, but I just wanted to share because I think it's a really great example of a way that you can do this. So we actually have a customer at Donut called customer.io, and they did this phenomenal program. Um, and so the reason I want to shout this out is because it is a way to give, you don't have to do something particular like this, but what I want you to take away from it is that as a company, you can see where this is maybe happening organically and naturally, and that people are starting to understand each other as more than coworkers. And then you can elevate and create spaces for that, which we'll talk about more later. But customer.io did a care package program, which I just loved and thought was so awesome. And what they did was there was an individual in the company that wanted to send a care package to someone else in the organization across the globe to share a little piece of their culture and say, like, here are some things from my hometown so that you can learn more about me. And people loved it. And so more people wanted to do it. And what did customer.io do? They said, we should, structure this a little bit, make it a program, add some budget to it, and show our people that we value them getting to know each other as coworkers outside of work. So just one example of how you can encourage your people to get to know each other.
Awesome example. Thanks for that, Courtney. And kind of in the spirit of giving your people a chance to get to know one another, I wanted to share a few of the things we do internally. And I guess my recommendation for everybody who's dialed in today, these are some of the questions you could potentially ask. And what I'm going to do is share the format and the exact questions and the takeaways we get from it. So every week, all team leads will meet with their team members. And we've built out a pretty robust list of questions to really try to understand what's happening in the team member's life. Here's some of my favorite questions. There's about 10 in total, but I wanted to highlight these three. So the first one up on screen says, what's the best thing that happened to you this week, either at work or outside of it? And I found as I've gotten to know my team members and colleagues, you can learn some really fascinating and impactful things. So for example, I just found out one of our account executives is that him and his wife are now expecting their first baby after years of trying. I got kind of choked up when he told me that because I knew the background story, and but by asking this question, I was able to understand what's happening and meaningful in his life, and I was able to build a deeper relationship. I also just had a really awesome conversation with a woman named Lauren on my team. And she had shared with me that she was about to get married the next week. And she shared, I don't know if for any of you out there, but when you plan a big event like a wedding, there's often a lot of nerves that come with that, a lot of fear about things that could go wrong or could go right. And so I was able to share my experiences on why I thought the day was so special. And I think I was able to maybe alleviate her fears a little bit. But more importantly, we're able to build this deep and meaningful connection. The next question says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you and why? So a lot of times in life, we ask people, hey, how's it going? And they can give you this kind of somewhat arbitrary answer of like, I'm fine. But what does fine? What does fine really mean? Fine could mean like maybe they're struggling to pay rent, or maybe they're about to get married. But unless you ask a more detailed question, you can't unearth the truth of the matter. So when you ask people to give you a scale of 1 to 10, it gives you a concrete answer, and then you're able to better address it if they want to do a deeper dive. So if somebody gives you a 3 out of 10, in my experience, there's a significant issue there. If somebody's a 10 out of 10, there's probably something really awesome happening in their life, either at work or outside of work. Something else that's really impactful and what I found is people tend to have their own different baselines. Some people are naturally 7 out of 10, some people are 9s out of 10. It's all good. But if people deviate from that number too long, maybe they're 7 out of 10 on average, but they drop down to like a 4 or 5 for just a couple of weeks, that's a huge leading indicator of future flight risk that they might turn over and leave the organization. And then lastly, one other question we ask is, what were some great contributions made by other team members? And this is just in the spirit of good leadership. In my experience, the best leaders tend to recognize and push down credit to their team. And when things go wrong, they soak up, they acknowledge the mistakes that have happened. But this just gives people a chance to shine a light on all the great work that's happening inside the organization. So there's just 3 of my top kind of questions I love to ask. But of course, you don't always have to go deep with questions. I think there's a huge amount of value in having some fun together and laughing together. So I mentioned up front, we're a user of Donut, and they have this great water cooler feature. It's a question to trigger deeper. It's a question that triggers a whole bunch of really fun, playful answers. We're on the right-hand screen. This is a real screenshot from our Slack, one of our Slack channels. And up top, you can see from Donut, when did you have your first donut? What type was it? This turns out to be a pretty passionate and interesting area of exploration. Jeremy got into his childhood and talked about how his parents bribed him with donuts. Olga, who immigrated from actually from Russia in her youth, talked about her kind of late exposure to donuts. Anyways, there's a lot of fun, cute, playful conversation. And over on the left-hand side, I thought this is a really great quote that shared laughter signals that people see the world in the same way, and it boosts their sense of connection. And I've seen this play out so many times, whether it's inside of Slack, or whether it's at a dinner party where people are laughing together. You want to break down barriers and connect people, get them laughing, and it's an awesome way to create connections. So I'm a huge fan of Donut and these types of questions. But sorry, Courtney.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was just gonna say I love that, and of course, I love that everyone was talking about donuts as well. I feel like it can be a very, very passionate and heated debate topic as well when you start asking people, what's better, yeast donuts or cake donuts? Um, but and I have my opinions. But anyway, one thing I just wanted to chime in as well, if you don't mind, Jason, is sharing a little bit more about why I love giving people these sort of small, easy opportunities to have fun and to laugh together. One thing I have observed, because we use this internally ourselves as well. I know this is our product, but we use it and we love it. And it makes it so easy for people. It is asynchronous, right? You can chime in on this anytime throughout the day. So if your team is really distributed, it's fun and easy for people to enter the conversation. Um, but also, I found that sometimes I'm learning things about my coworkers that I wouldn't have learned. Like I might not ask them, do you like yeast donuts or cake donuts in a regular work conversation? But even more than that, I'm also learning who's really passionate about what topics. Like when people chime in, a lot of the food ones, pancakes versus waffles, is a hot dog a sandwich, fun stuff like that. And if y'all have opinions, you can drop it in the Q&A as well. But the other thing I'm seeing is, okay, maybe this person doesn't usually chime in on a lot of topics, but there was a question about, something that they love to do outdoors and they end up sharing a bunch of pictures from their personal life, or even just seeing how they communicate, right? Like Jeremy had a lot to say on that, on that picture there about some memories from their childhood. And some people like to react with emojis or drop memes or GIFs. And so sometimes I'm even learning about my coworkers just by reading what they're saying and the way that they say it, and like how passionate are they about a particular topic. So I love this idea of just making it easy to have a little bit of fun together.
Amazing. I love it. I'm going to take it one step further and not to pump Donut's tires too much, but like I said, big fans. We also use Donut for its, I guess, what I call their kind of core use case, which is creating these serendipitous meetings. So like, I know a lot of tech companies, a lot of organizations are hybrid now. People are working from home or coffee shops, and Donut's just a fantastic way to create authentic connections between people. So for example, one of the recent meetings I was set up with was with Day. Day is one of the new kind of senior developers to join our team. I think it's probably fair to say Day is a little bit introverted, but a fascinating, super smart, highly talented individual. And so we had this chance to connect for about 20 minutes, and we had such a good conversation. For example, like one of my favorite things to do is try to understand what people's zones of genius are. Like, what are the things that they love to do that they're also extremely good at? And so I was able to have this chat with Dave about what he believes his zone of genius is, which as a leader or as his colleague, I'm better able to set him up for success in the future. Of course, we don't have to just talk about zones of genius. We can talk about fun things like, what do you like to do in your spare time? What are you passionate about? But I love these meetings, and it's again, just a great and really easy and meaningful way to create connections all across the organization. One other thing I've noted inside of our organization is we've been adding a lot of people, a lot of headcount to the organization. And sometimes I kind of find it unruly, like all these new people are coming in, but Donut's a time where I can kind of pause, reflect, and get to really know people as they are. So I love this tool and these meetings. Cool. So that was method one. Next, we're going to talk about method 2, which is personalizing recognition and celebration help foster a feeling of belonging. There's a great stat up on screen that says 79% of US employees leave their job because they feel underappreciated. There's a really great article by Forbes recently that said, turn the great resignation into the great recognition. And I can say hands down, without a doubt, recognizing people, appreciating them, shining a spotlight on them is one of the best ways for them to feel a part of the team. And it does lower turnover. It can lower turnover by more than 40%. It can increase engagement, has all these positive outcomes. And to take that one step further, I love telling stories as a way to communicate what I think are really important points. Normally when we do kickoffs for a new recognition program, we encourage organizations to bring people together virtually or in person or a hybrid of the two. This is pre-COVID. I'd gone to a kickoff out in Pennsylvania, and the CEO was actually taking the time to recognize a bunch of key staff for all the great work that he had seen. As a part of the kickoff, he recognized this one woman, an executive assistant, and upon that recognition, she started crying. I was kind of sitting at the front of the room and I noticed this, and I was like, what's going on here? Like, I didn't quite understand what was happening. Afterwards, I had a chance to connect with her. I'm like, I noticed a pretty emotional response there. Is there anything you can do to help? Or yeah, can you tell me more about that? And she said that I've worked here for 8 years, and this is the first time someone said thank you. And like, I guarantee you, there's people like this in your organization that are doing great work, that are keen, maybe desperate for this appreciation. And it's funny, sometimes I get a little bit of pushback from the manufacturing or blue collar organizations who are like, people don't need to be told thank you. They just want to do their jobs. Fundamentally, recognition actually anchors in a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like at the bottom, we have food and shelter, like we need to survive. The next tier is the desire to be appreciated, to be loved by our peers and colleagues. Recognition is built into us as a part of just being a human being. It's a part of our DNA. So recognition always works. It just has to be done tastefully in a way that matters to your culture. So one question I get asked all the time is, what's an easy way to bring recognition to life in your organization? And I wanted to share just a quick tip that we've seen. So I know, especially for the hybrid organizations, a lot of you will use tools like Slack or MS Teams. What I recommend doing is setting up a recognition channel, inviting all staff to participate in it, allowing them to recognize one another and to add in a core value. Up on screen, I just have a screenshot of what it could look like, like a little recognition channel and people recognizing one another for good work. You can do this without any outside tool or help. We obviously plug into Slack and MS Teams. We're very happy to help with that. But this is something you could do today without any outside assistance. Something else I'm a big advocate of is to set up a regular recurring meeting where people can publicly recognize each other either on a Zoom meeting or in person. This can be done on a weekly basis, monthly basis, or quarterly basis. It really will give you a chance to highlight a lot of great work happening in your organization. One final comment on recognition. So not only does it lift people up, does it make them feel valued, and it lowers turnover, it's also an incredibly motivational and a motivating and aligning tool. When you recognize people, you're also creating like these hero stories inside your organization. And whoever you recognize inside of that hero story, people will then want to emulate this. This is also hardwired into our DNA. This is why when we're growing up, we watch what our parents do, and then we normally will emulate those types of behaviors. So this is a chance to like set the culture of your organization. And again, I'd highly recommend that you take advantage of this. So the quick tips there are: set up a regular meeting, either weekly, monthly, or quarterly, plug it into your favorite tools like MS Teams or Slack, and start doing it today. I'd love to turn it back over to Courtney now to talk a little bit about celebration conversations.
Yes, thank you, Jason. I also just want to echo that a couple of the things you said about recognition. At Donut, we have a channel called Little Wins, so a very similar idea where anyone can shout out when they see, a win, any type of win that they've seen. And it's funny because it's called Little Wins, and sometimes they're actually very big wins. But the concept there was, a win doesn't have to be big for it to be worth celebrating and uplifting to other people. It can be something small that someone accomplished that they've been trying to get done, or something that you don't want to go unseen by others within the company. And so one thing that has kind of come out of that is, we've talked to our people about, what's a time that you've been recognized that like really stands out in your mind, and like a great memory that you have of being recognized at school, at work. It could be any time in your life. And like the things that kept coming up when we asked that for our people were, that it was extremely personalized. It was unexpected. It wasn't like, okay, it's time for us to do. I actually love the idea of doing a meeting to shout people out, but it wasn't like, it is Tuesday, it's time for us to recognize you. It was, it was in the moment. People talk about it being timely, but also really personalized. So like, hey, I know Courtney really loves art, so I'm going to like recognize her, and maybe if it's in the budget, give her a little gift card to like treat herself to some piece of art. So lots of ways that you can personalize it. And then, why does this matter, what we're talking about here? And I think Jason already started to touch on, there are a lot of ways that this translates into really positive outcomes for your business. And so the source here is Psychology Today, but I want to kind of talk about like, how does this impact your brain? And then how does that help your people be able to be at their best at work? So, have oxytocin and endorphins, which gives people a sense of well-being. They feel safer to be able to take risks and experiment and learn and handle challenges, things that are coming their way. We know that work is very stressful these days. Boosting their serotonin allows them to focus more, and they can be more creative. They can come up with innovative ideas that they're able to do because they have a little bit more energy there. And they can actually transform that stress into success and feel proud of it. And then I love this one about dopamine, because this is something for me personally. I've got to be able to ignore distractions. I've got to be able to pay attention and really, really focus on my problem solving. And so recognizing people isn't just about like, okay, it feels good for a second. There are like long-term positive effects of giving them these different types of recognition that we've mentioned.
Awesome, thank you.
Sorry, I muted myself. Okay, so I'm going to kick us off to talk about method number 3. And this is something that if you're familiar with Donut, maybe you know this. If not, maybe you're kind of getting a sense for this today from the things that Jason has shared and the wonderful ways that they're using Donut. But it's something we're really passionate about, Donut, and it's about creating time and space for authentic employee connections. So there's this great quote here: "Real connection happens naturally. The key is to create spaces where connections can thrive." And spaces that are safe, inclusive, and encourage people to be their authentic self. So this is something that we're really passionate about. And there's an example that I always like to use. It's actually an outside of work example, but I think it really illustrates the importance of this and why it actually works. Because sometimes people hear this and they're like, that sounds counterintuitive. Like, why do I need to intentionally create space for connection if it happens naturally? Shouldn't it just happen? So I always use this example of, I have a best friend, someone I've known for many, many years. And we love spending time together. We love hanging out. But I'm going to be honest, in my real life, life is chaos, and I don't see her as much as I would like to. And so what we do is we create a recurring calendar event, literally on our personal calendars, where we get a reminder, that it's going to be our time to hang out once every like 2 or 3 weeks. And we don't have like an agenda for that meeting, but it is the reminder that it is important for us to take time to connect and catch up with each other. And because of that, our relationship grows and we're able to build on it and get to know more about each other over the years. I think the same thing is true at work. So we, as leaders of our companies, have to be giving people the permission and the space and thinking a little bit intentionally, especially now when people are hybrid or remote, or maybe they are still in person, but in person, I think this is still true. Some people are going to be naturally very good at striking up a conversation in a hallway or saying, hey, let's go to lunch, or let's do a game night, or a happy hour. And other people, that's just not their forte. So we have to give them like the space and the permission to do that. And sometimes we even have to go a step further and give them like a little bit of a, not an agenda, but structure, right? So everybody, when you connect for coffee meetings this week, like here's a prompt that you could start with to break the ice, like those water cooler prompts that we showed earlier. So it could be, talk about your first childhood memory that brings you joy or something like that. So if we'll go to the next slide, I think we also have another great quote here. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Yeah, okay. So this quote here basically just further illustrates exactly what I was just saying. People assume that connection happens by itself, but have discovered that it actually takes effort. it takes conscious planning. We can't just depend on bumping into each other in the hallway. So this is almost echoing exactly what I said on the previous slide. But we really have to nudge our people, and also lead by example. So if you're a leader in any capacity in your organization, and even if you're not, if you're an IC, like, show that you value taking that time out of your day to chat with your coworker for a few minutes, even if it's just the top of the meeting. I think there was someone earlier in the Q&A, and I just wanted to come back to this because I thought it was really awesome. We added this question. This was Amy Strauss. We added this question to our staff meetings. We open with one great personal thing and one great work thing that happened this week. It's been really helpful with building relationships and getting to know more about what's going on with someone personally. I love that. Like, you're not even, saying, okay, we've got to find 30 minutes every week where people are going to take time. And if you can do that, great. But that's like a small and simple way that you can show and set the example that it's okay to share a little bit about who you are as a person. And then if we go to this next slide, just a couple quick examples from LinkedIn here. We love when people shout out what they're doing with Donut on LinkedIn. But part of the reason we wanted to highlight these, two different things going on here. On the left, I know there's a lot of text there, so I'll draw your attention to that third paragraph down. During one of my donuts, we realized that we had a lot of shared experiences. So we now meet monthly to catch up and talk. It shows how you can connect with your colleagues and get to know them even in a remote world. And so their company, again, created the space for people to be able to meet and get to know each other. And what I love here is they then took it upon themselves to keep meeting regularly because they realized they had so much in common. And if their company hadn't kind of given them the space to take that time to chat outside of just their work tasks, they might not have learned that they had, different hobbies and interests in common. And then over on the right, I actually love this quote because they're talking about rolling out Donut during a time when it was really important for them to find a way to still make those serendipitous connections. But in that second paragraph, Paul says, although hesitant at first, it was amazing connecting colleagues who would never have met or not chatted with for a long time. And the initiative helped overcome that social awkwardness of getting to meet up with your new and old colleagues socially. So I love that Paul acknowledges that it can be a little awkward at first, to meet with people for social purposes when you're maybe used to being like work all the time. But if you make the space for it and you show your people that it is okay and this is an intentional thing that you value at your organization, they'll open up and they'll start to really get to know each other and learn more about each other and connect in new ways.
Amazing. And so thank you for that, Courtney. It's funny, you mentioned that idea from the Q&A window about talking about some of the people's personal best and best at work news. We do something similar, and I'd love to share that now. So something we do is we do a daily company stand-up. It says on screen Scrum, it's actually a stand-up. It's just a way to bring the team together. And in summary, it's a two-part meeting. The first 5 minutes, we share the best personal goal and work goal for the day. And we do these in small breakout rooms. And then we bring everybody together, the whole company. And each day, one person will ask a question of another person. And it's normally something fun or playful, like if you could be any actor, who would you be? Or if you could go back in time and change something, what era would you go back to? Or tell us about something you're passionate about. But the reason, again, this is significant, it creates these moments, these micro moments for people to connect, learn about one another. And we also make sure everybody has their video on. I think it's also really important for people to see one another. It's a part of humanity. I don't Zoom. You never want people to hide behind Zoom. So it's great for them to actually connect in all ways. So that's something that we've done, and we've had a lot of positive feedback. It allows people to especially connect across teams. I know in hybrid environments, silos can pop up pretty darn fast. And this is just one way to create connections, both socially and in a business sense across the whole organization. The second thing we do is we do a lot of virtual events. One of the really fun things is we do something called a Kahoot Trivia Day. It was a 1 hour virtual team bonding event. We did it on this Kahoot platform. All the questions were centered in and around employees. So up on top, for example, you can say, guess who? And this was a baby photo from one of the team members. In this case, it turned out it was Sam. But there's also really people can vote, and it keeps track of scores, but it's a really fun, super playful way for the whole organization to to get together. So those are kind of two quick tactics from my side. And I think that begins kind of wrapping up everything we wanted to discuss today. I'm now going to switch gears and talk about some of the key takeaways. So here's some of the things we're hoping you could get out of today's session. We wanted to talk about the value of building human connections. I know sometimes in the HR or people space, we lack the numbers. And sometimes because we lack the numbers, we don't always have the conviction to make change happen in our organization. So what I hope was communicated is that there's a huge ROI to creating these connections between and amongst team members. We also went through the 3 ways to build strong workplace culture, and we shared a bunch of tools, tactics, and tips. Obviously, in a distributed workplace, technology can enhance and support the process of building human connections, but we can't replace it. At the end of the day, you got to get people talking. So those are some of the key takeaways. I'm going to switch gears momentarily. We're going to get into Q&A and the learning credits in a second. I love to put on my, I guess, CEO hat and share just a little bit more information about Bucketlist rewards. And in a few seconds, I'm going to give you the chance, if you want to see a demo of how this platform works, I'd encourage you to take advantage of it. But if you want to learn more about Bucketlist, we're one of the leading rewards and recognition platforms. We do an amazing job of plugging into all your favorite communication tools and making recognition seamless and easy. We do everything you could possibly imagine. We're a full enterprise platform that includes things like peer recognition, manager spot bonuses, employee anniversaries. And we have some phenomenal awards, everything from like a $5 Amazon gift card to sending people heli skiing. We're really good at making dreams come true, whether they're small or very, very big. Let me pop this up on screen. And yeah, so if you want to learn more about Bucketlist rewards, just go ahead and click yes. And we'll have one of our very knowledgeable people get in touch with you, and they can share a little bit more about the platform. And I can see a whole bunch of responses coming in now, which is fantastic. I'm going to give this about another 20 seconds or 10 seconds now. Awesome. Thank you, team. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll, and then we're going to turn it over to Courtney to talk a little bit more about Donut.
Awesome. So I know we've shown you a little bit of what you can do with Donut today and talked a little bit about it. But Donut is an app built for Slack that's really all about helping people connect for a variety of purposes. It could just be for those serendipitous conversations to chat with each other. Just really all about just building stronger relationships, greater trust, camaraderie, and community within your organization. So you can do that through the Donut intros, water cooler. We have some stuff that can focus on new hires, celebrating anniversaries, lots of different things that you can do. And it is built right into Slack. So if your people are working in Slack, that makes things really easy. And as of now, we've made over 10 million intros across 20,000 teams. So we've got a lot of people who are connecting with each other who maybe wouldn't have been without Donut. So we're very proud of that. And I know we've also got the poll. I think if you would like to learn more about Donut, I know our team would be really happy to touch base with you and send you more info.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Courtney. And as I've said before, like, we're huge users of this tool. Highly, highly recommend you encourage or learn more about Donut. So if I was in your shoes, I'd be clicking yes. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll, and then we're going to get into Q&A and the HRCI credits. One moment. So here are the credits. I'm going to read these out. I know some of you dial in each time and just listen to the audio version of the conversation. So the HRCI credits, the number is 599174. And then for SHRM, the activity ID is 22236K4. And with that, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. Looks like there's been quite a bit of activity in here and a lot of action.
I definitely see a good one that I would love to talk about if it's
Courtney,
okay with you.
why don't you jump on that one and I'll get caught up on all the activity.
Yeah, absolutely. So anonymous attendee, so I'm not sure who this is, but I think it's a great question. Ask, how do you create connections or relationships to impact or improve culture if those relationships have been already in place for years, such as tenured employees and teams? I wanted to jump in on this one because I think this is a really great question and something that I encountered. I know I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I used to work in um, customer experience. So I was also helping a lot of teams implement donut at organizations where they might have half the organization is new and half of them have been there a really long time. And how do we get everybody to buy into it if some people have been here a long time? So I'm definitely not saying donut is the way to do that, but I have experience with this question. So what I wanted to say, whether you're using donut or not, I think there's something about our brains really fire up when we encounter something new that makes us curious. And so I think that is also true in how people interact with one another. And so even if your people have been there a long time and maybe they already know a lot of information about each other, so some of those lightweight questions like, where do you live? What's your hobby? What's your favorite thing to do outside of work? Maybe they already know all that stuff about each other, and that's okay. So I think then what you're going to want to think about is what types of experiences or activities, like those examples that Jason shared, are people going to be able to do that maybe they've never done together before? Maybe they haven't ever shared baby pictures before and tried to guess who is who, or maybe they haven't done. I know there are all kinds of experiences out there that you can book through different platforms of things like a cooking experience, even if your people are working remotely. And of course, if they're in person, that makes that even easier. But shared experiences, things that they have not tried together before. So I think the question I would ask myself then is like, okay, if I want people to grow their relationship and they've been here a long time, what are some things that maybe they haven't ever learned about each other? Or what are some activities that they haven't done together before? And how do I build in some time and space for that?
That's awesome, Courtney. And that actually, as you're chatting there, that just triggered a memory on my side. And I can maybe do a smaller experience share on how we've deepened relationships where there already was quite a strong relationship. For example, although we're a hybrid company, we do bring the teams together ideally on a quarterly basis, and we do offsites. And one way to deepen a relationship, especially when people know each other quite well, is to give them a list of questions that do in fact go quite deep. So for example, the way we kicked off our most recent sales offsite is we asked some questions, which encourage people to go deep, like what's been the best thing that's happened in your life, and or what's a personal challenge that you've had to overcome recently. And people, they shared some of the deepest, most impactful things happening in their life. One person had a family member going through substance abuse. Another person had one of their father pass away recently. And if you want to see people bond, you create those authentic moments and allow people to willingly share. That is how you deepen relationship between people who know each other. I'm a part of something called EO. It's the Entrepreneurs Organization. And we get together, me and a group of 7 other entrepreneurs get together on a monthly basis. And the format is you talk about the top 5% of life and the bottom 5% of life. So much of our lives are spent talking about sports or the weather. Fine, totally cool. That's fun, playful content. But life, the meaningful stuff of life happens on the fringes. And if you create these opportunities for people to share, you can create these incredibly incredibly meaningful connections between people. And then some of you might be saying, like, how does this play out at work? It actually does matter at work. Google did this really cool study called Project Aristotle, which looked at how the top performing teams performed. And the best performing teams, the most foundational layer is a sense of trust and authenticity, and where mistakes are okay. And trust and authenticity are built by people sharing with one another, especially when the leader can authentically share what's happening in their life. So it all connects together. We're human beings. Deep and meaningful connection does create for more powerful teams. That was my 2 cents.
Love that.
Thank you. I see another question about scrums. So the question is, curious on how you organize the scrums. Do people have to sign up, or do they get paired randomly via Slack? And what is your advice on how to get employees more engaged and participating in opportunities offered on a company level? So that's actually a really great question. What we found is that as we scaled quite quickly and the teams could become quite large, is the way we create these groups is one of the 8 people from our HR team does breakout groups on each Monday morning. And so we break up the company into groups of between 5 and 10 people, and they're randomly assigned. And so, for example, somebody from sales can meet somebody from dev and somebody from customer success. So randomly people are lumped together in groups of 5 to 10 people. and they go through a running agenda of what's your personal goals and what's your work goal for the day or week. And then we pull everybody back up at a higher level. So we do organize it for the organization, and we do make it optional. Attendance is pretty darn high. It's cool. Like, a lot of people love to join these sessions. And the value of the small groups is, normally as a group expands, people are less and less likely to contribute, just because if people get a little bit shy. But at the small group level, 5 to 10 people, it's a lot easier to chat with your colleagues. Yeah, that's my experience on the daily stand-up. I don't know if, Courtney, if you want to share any other additional thoughts.
Yeah, this reminded me of something that we've been doing at Donut. It's not a daily stand up. We have done something like that. Well, some teams do some stuff like that, independent teams. And it's very similar to what you all do, Jason. So I love that you shared that example. Something we've been doing that I think is relevant here. So I just wanted to share because it's actually been very successful. And I think it was just something we kind of tried and we're like, oh, people really seem to like this. That is in a similar vein. Is I think almost every time recently that we've had new folks join the team, we've been playing a little game called Things in Common. And our team is fully remote, so it is happening on Zoom, but you could play it no matter where your people are. And what we do is similar to your team's scrums and stand-ups, Jason, we break out people into small groups because we've had the same experience where if it's too big, especially for those new people who are on the team, it might be really intimidating for them to share. But the goal of that, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's you break people up into small groups, you give them a limited amount of time. We actually do this very intentionally to get them to move pretty quickly. And so it might be like, okay, we're going to have 4 or 5 minutes for you all to find as many things in common with each other as you possibly can. And it's got to be something that like the whole group of 4 or 5 has in common. And people come up with the most hilarious things because it might be like you get into your small group and you're like, do we all like pasta? Do we all, or you'll be like, do we all like spaghetti? And one person in the group's like, no, I don't like spaghetti, but I do like macaroni. Okay, so we all like pasta of some sort, so people get really creative with it. But now we've started, I know earlier in the presentation, I talked a little bit about intentionality, making space for people to meet and have conversations, but also sometimes giving them a little bit of structure, because sometimes you just throw them in the room and say, find something in common. It might work. It kind of depends on your culture and the people in the room. But now we've also started, making it a little bit more structured and saying, okay, you're going to have 3 minutes to discuss things in common, but it's around a particular topic, like bucket list items, right? And it could be bucket list items you have in common, bucket list items that you've all checked off, bucket list things that you do not want on your bucket list. It's however you want to interpret it. And so that's been really fun, just to see how giving people a little bit of extra structure to those meetings can help them enter that conversation and be playful. And I know I saw some questions coming in around like, well, how do you get people to participate and engage if you're offering them this space? I think one thing you can do is just make it even easier by setting a little bit of a goal or an intention to that, so that people kind of know why we're here.
Amazing. I'm kind of scouring through some of the questions. I see another one I might jump on here, which is, how would you encourage buy-in from leadership if the current recognition program has already been established? How would you introduce a new experience to spark interest? So I think that's a great question. And I think it's a great question because I know other people experience this as potential pain point, but more importantly, that question on how to get buy-in from leadership is a really important one. In my experience, whatever the leaders are doing, the staff will tend to fall into place and also do as well. So if you get buy-in from leadership, the rest of the team's pretty likely to align around it. In my experience, I just kind of, I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, I'd set up some sort of regular recurring format, like whether it's a weekly, monthly, or quarterly meeting, where leaders have a chance to recognize great performance in the organization. And the best way to do it is to don't just necessarily, you can have like on the spot recognition, shout outs, good news, whatever you want to call it. But I would recommend doing deeper dives in storytelling. And it doesn't always have to be the CEO, but it's nice coming from somebody quite senior. And just do a deep dive, like hero story. And I guarantee you there's so many great stories happening inside of your organization that people would love to hear about. It puts a spotlight both on the leader and the person who does the great work. And that's probably one of the best, easiest ways to get buy-in from leadership on a recognition program. And then additionally, there's all sorts of cool things like you can do around like nomination processes, or if you choose to, you can have points attached to the recognition. You can expire points, for example. You can send gentle prompts and nudges if leaders are not using the recognition program. There's all sorts of like kind of automated ways to get buy-in as well. But Courtney, do you have kind of comments or feedback on this one?
I think I would just say, I mean, I echo everything that you've said, Jason. And I also think, if you've already got a recognition platform that's been established, you might want to come with some of the stats around, like, if there's something new you're wanting to bring in. Definitely always showing, if you can back it up with data, that's always great. And I love what Jason said about hero stories, because also if you can back up anything with stories and data and things that are happening in your organization that speak to why it matters at your particular organization and your people. So sometimes when we're evaluating something at Donut, I might try to really make sure that I am getting feedback from our managers, our leaders and managers. I'm combining words together now, from our managers to see, what would be impactful for their teams, as well as our ICs, and kind of find out, what would be meaningful for them, so that I can then bring that information with me of why I think this particular tool or experience or platform might meet the needs of what we're hearing from our people.
Amazing. I know we're kind of coming up on time here, and we have had a chance to make our way through a number of the questions. Courtney, are there any other sort of questions you want to jump on or highlight that we should address now?
There's one that I love that I think just came in from Amy Gossen. How do you shift recognition so it isn't always the same folks being recognized, causing others to feel negative? Because I think this is something I know in my experience people talk about a lot. Is like, it's great when you first roll it out and maybe it's the same handful of people, and that starts to not feel good over time. So I think there are a few things you can do here. I mean, I think one really powerful piece is really making sure that your managers understand that it's important to recognize all their people, but also I think you want to make sure that the people who are being recognized publicly might be the ones who want to be recognized publicly, and maybe those other people are being recognized privately. So I think there's an element of making sure that people are being recognized in ways that are meaningful for them. I'm not at your organization, so I don't know whether or not that's true, but sometimes I know I can like look at our little wins channel and be like, okay, I just want to make sure lots of different people are being recognized. And I can check in with managers and say, hey, I see like this person or this person hasn't gotten any recognition in a while. And they might share with me, well, actually, like they have, but that person prefers to receive their recognition privately. So that's happening in private conversations with them. And of course, that stuff can show up too in like feedback cycles and reviews. But so I would say, make sure you understand how people want to receive recognition. Definitely encourage managers. And if you're noticing that there's any managers that maybe that's just like not their strength, that you're sort of, maybe training is a little bit of a strong word, but that you're really encouraging them to take a little bit of time now and again to shout people out if that's something they're not used to doing it, because that can make a huge impact, as we've talked about today. And then, the last thing I would say, is giving everyone in the organization the permission to recognize others, because it doesn't have to come from the top down. So people's colleagues may see something that the managers or the leaders are missing. And so I think the more you can do to encourage everybody across the org, whether you're doing it with a tool or just a channel, like we talked about earlier, just increasing the amount to which you are saying, hey, it is okay for all of us to recognize each other, who deserves a shout. Or I want to highlight Jason's idea again earlier about something I think that you said you all do, where you have a recurring time when you just like take a few minutes to ask like who knocked it out of the park this week, and people can shout out whoever they think deserves recognition.
Excellent answer, Courtney. Fantastic. I have basically nothing further to add. Maybe just like one tiny bit of context. You gave some great thoughts there, and on the bottom part, the last part of it, you'd mentioned the importance of making it safe for everybody to recognize. We call it peer-to-peer recognition. It doesn't matter what you call it. As Courtney was saying, it's a great idea. And just to double down on the context, what we've observed is a lot of times like managers, C-level staff, they're super busy, or they're in their silos. But when everybody can participate, the overall recognition is going to go way up, because the line level employees will see all the great work their colleagues are doing. So there's going to be way more recognition. It's going to be way more inclusive. The participation rates are going to be way higher. And we have all the stats and numbers to back that up. So basically, Courtney's super right.
Yeah. And then I think it also comes back into play when you are doing, like, when managers are having conversations with their teams, you know, maybe during review cycles, because now they're seeing the stuff that they might have otherwise missed because of that peer-to-peer recognition. And so they don't have to try to remember every single thing that this particular individual did a wonderful job on this, you know, past 6 months, because other people were also recognizing them. And so now it might be top of mind for the leaders.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So I think with that, we're kind of at the top of the hour, and I want to be really respectful to everybody's time. What I would say is, like, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a bunch of great takeaways. I could see there were some fantastic questions and lots of great feedback. So thank you for joining us. And it looks like a lot of you really enjoy the content as well. Courtney, thank you so much for sharing your insights and ideas and your enthusiasm today. That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I guess any final comments or questions from our side before we officially wrap things up and close it off? Wonderful. With that, team, have an amazing day. Go out there, build some connections, and we look forward to seeing you in the future at future sessions like this. So thank you very much. Have an awesome day, everybody.
Okay. Bye, everyone.